Greetings out there in YouTube land from the planet Earth. I will be traveling shortly. I'm taking off September to do some traveling for Jesus. I'm going to be about 10 days, I'm leaving in mid-September after my son's birthday. And I'll be about 10 days in England, where they're really big on their fish and chips. And then I'm going to take off to the Netherlands for about several weeks. Again, another area big on their fish, right? I'll be doing quite a bit of traveling, right? And I remember Japan a lot more than many other people. They seem to have forgotten about it. When that big boom happened, the thing is still leaking radioactive into the oceans daily. They're dumping over 300, well, that was a long time ago, over 300 million gallons a day of radioactive water into the oceans, right? And yes, all the oceans are connected, so think about it, right? A lot of people don't. And they're trying to move 88 tons. They're metric tons, though. A metric ton is 2.2 thousand, where ours is like a regular ton is 2,000, a metric ton would be 2,200 pounds, right? That's a lot of contaminated material, right? They move some around and are moving in parks and scattering it around and everything, trying to figure out what to do with all that waste. When some of the building material and all that many years ago washed up on the shores of Canada and the United States, especially the United States down there, it was radioactive, brothers and sisters. Do the math. You've got mutated dolphins off of California from the radiation. All manners of sores on these sea fish and animals and sea life that they're finding out there due to the radiation. And it's not just from Japan, brothers and sisters. Oh, no, 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 no. That added a lot. But they got at least one, and probably more. But I heard it the other day, one of their nuclear coffins is leaking. They dumped into the oceans, right? Now, after World War II, a lot of people might not know, they dumped mega tons of chemical weapons into the oceans. Yeah, and I mean, right now, to this day, they're still in areas, in Belgium and so forth, in that area up there. They're still pulling out mustard gas shells out of the ground. When a farmer sees a bomb that didn't go off, they just put it by the side of the road, and the army drives by every once in a while and collects them. But a lot of them were filled with toxic gases like mustard gas, right? And it's still coming out of the ground to this day. Grenades from World War I have exploded, and when some people will be taking tours of that area, think about that. Over 100 years later, it was still exploded. That's the danger of that stuff. But here they got millions of tons of chemical weapons. You look yourself. They dumped them in the oceans, brothers and sisters. They were. If you look at some of the old videos online, you see them dumping ammo, millions upon countless millions of rounds of ammo for the warships and the anti-aircraft guns and shells for the guns, you name it. For them it was cheaper to just dump it in the oceans than bring it all the way back home. But what many forget is they dumped a lot of stuff, including nuclear weapons. Did you know that they've lost some? They claim it's only 6 nuclear weapons that have been lost and never recovered as of 2013, right? But they almost nuked Atlanta one time. They thought they had a dummy bomb on there, could have been mismarked, and at that one point there were like 10,000 missing nuclear triggers and so forth flying around, all sorts of components or whatever else mismarked them. You name it, right? I thought that number was a bit high myself, but hey, I'm not going to argue it. I wasn't there. But the thing is, they got 6 nuclear weapons that have never been recovered back then. They had the nuclear material that was stolen right out of some nuclear site in Iran. Some guy in a van drove in there, grabbed some stuff, and drove out, and nobody stopped him. All right, inside deal. Some clinic center, a big dentist clinic center with mega dentists in it. Some people went in there, and the place had many of those X-ray machines, many of them, and they stole the radioactive material from the many dental X-ray machines in that building, and there were a bunch of them, right? Now think about that, many of them. What would you use that for? Making a dirty bomb. People have been getting visions of dirty bombs going off in that Chicago area, by the way, brothers and sisters, right? And they're dumping all this stuff in the ocean. Well, just after Japan, and they dropped the bombs in Japan, and Japan surrendered, they had at least 50 more of them nuke bombs, right? Most people don't know about that. You see some videos on there and look around if you look at it. and they dumped them into the oceans. I joke you not. Dumped them into the ocean. Oh, we didn't need it. Your parents surrendered and dumped them in the ocean. So you got those on top of all the stuff that people have been throwing into the ocean. All these other nations, all this other radioactive material they've been throwing into the oceans on top of all that toxic waste, right? And can you imagine? Sailors dump thousands of tons of radioactive material into waste. The oceans are full of it. Never mind all this toxic weapons and chemical weapons that they dumped into the oceans. The risk of danger, some of that ever coming loose. Imagine an undersea earthquake rocking a ship around, breaking a container, or moving it enough that it might leak out of a container and into the oceans. And you wonder some of the stuff going on out there. Mass animal deaths and so forth. Has some of the stuff already been leaking? And look at the stuff they dump into the oceans every day. We're basically living in an atrium. It's the only way to put it. And instead of growing the trees and plants like we should to clean and make more air for us to breathe, strengthening our ozone layer, protecting us from solar radiation, no, they're stripping everything down, cutting it all down and polluting more, weakening our ozone shield. So we're victims of solar radiation. And skin cancer rates are going up big time, so much so that the insurance companies that used to cover it have stopped covering it, brothers and sisters. They've polluted the air, they've polluted the land, they've polluted the food, the water. They're controlling everything to mess you up, brothers and sisters. Their plan is to get rid of you. Depopulation. Their Agenda 21 or Agenda 2020s, or take your pick of the name, Georgia Guidestones. They want to get rid of 7 billion people roughly and bring it down to 500 million that they control from their fancy caves in the ground to come up later. Oh, we are your masters. Bow down. We'll give you food and water. The Bible speaks of this hard days coming. 2 measures of wheat, a measure is a pound for a penny. 3 measures of barley. So that's 3 pounds of bread. They used to make a barley wine, barley beer. It would ferment, and then you could drink it because they didn't know how to boil water back then or to purify water. And there's a limited amount of burning material and so forth. You got to understand their location, right? They could naturally ferment in that hot area there, and then they could get a calorie-rich beer to consume, and they drank the beer with the bread for lunch and so forth. Okay? But a penny back in the Bible days was a day's wages. I know I read about it, and I remember, especially since these fixed my memories, about Bush's daughter when he was elected president of the United States, how his daughter took Air Force Two down to South America and bought that aquifer. Not a very large, well, it's still large. Back then, the Great Lakes is the largest body of fresh water on the planet. Right? Now, that aquifer is the largest body of fresh water on the planet. Well, they contaminated the Great Lakes from the American side deliberately, throwing in all that chromium-6 lead and everything else, even dumping radioactive waste in it from the other side, taking extra water when they weren't supposed to for that Mississippi to keep their barges going. Oh, yes, brothers and sisters, deliberately contaminating the largest body of fresh water on the planet, so it's not that anymore. You can't even drink from it without risking getting sick. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. All of the states is like, think about it, like Flint, Michigan, and some parts of it are worse. They had a thing about it not that long ago, and it's so sad. And the government has all the time in the world to argue about everything else except putting a limit on the amount of chromium-6 in the water. Which after, if any of you watched Aaron Brockovich, you can see the problems with it. There should be none in the water. But they're so busy arguing about everything else, they haven't sat down. And you're paying them, brothers and sisters. This is the biggest, saddest joke. To talk about everything else except what really matters to you, your health, your life, your family. That shit should not be in the water, period. Right? And it's you're the voter, who can stand up out there for you Americans and say, hey, none of this stuff in my water. No, period. Right? Demand a change. They've got you playing a game. They're your employees. Remember, they work for you. The people are supposed to be the bosses. Though it isn't really that way. It's the illusion and the lie they tell you, where they run things and you disagree with them, and they got the cops beating you and they throw you into them secret prisons and all that. You go into a FEMA camp and disappear with one of them head choppers they got. Oh yeah, China ships out. They're 95% of all the rare minerals on Earth, the producer. Everything that you take for granted, your electronics and all the stuff being made and recycled and all that, is done from countries like China and that. They make the vaccines that people take for flus or what have you in the States, right? And they interrely on each other. They're all buddy-buddy behind the scenes, but they'll argue and saber rattle in front of the people playing their games, brothers and sisters. You know the time of day. The Bible tells you Satan offered up the future kingdoms of the world to Jesus to be bowed down to him. What do you think's around us? These are the latter days, brothers and sisters, right? They're just moving around radioactive dirt. And the funniest thing is, food too radioactive to be sold to the people of Japan is being sold in the streets of America. No joke. You can buy stuff too radioactive for the people of Japan in America. They got no problem selling you anything for a buck, brothers and sisters. For the hearts of many have waxed cold, brothers and sisters. You know it. So Matthew 24 all around. So Hosea with all the mass animal deaths, the blood waters and rivers. You know, they can call it whatever the hell they want these days. It's red water, right? And the people back then would have called it water's blood. Much is coming, brothers and sisters. Look what's going on this planet. And this is where God is going to rule the entire universe from. He has to have more life than just here. Come on. That's easy to figure out. Why else would God need to rule the entire universe from here if there wasn't something to rule? But look what they're doing to God's garden. Exactly what the fallen angels wanted to do and Satan wanted to do. To destroy God's wondrous creation. The stupid people, a tiny handful of stupid people, have done that. When God gave us free energy, all we wanted, unlimited supply, solar, wind, water. Water wheels ran businesses and industry long ago, actually run factories, water wheels, produce energy. Look at Niagara Falls without polluting. Right? These are just to boil water. Right? Contaminated the entire planet. Right? Shows you what they know. Sad part is that the many have allowed the few to destroy God's creation. And he's pissed. He's coming back soon. Look around. Storms, and they're going to be increasing and getting worse, brothers and sisters, because the Bible says so. If you do a search on earthquakes, you do an earthquake, biblical search, earthquake, no S, and you'll see that several have not happened yet. And those several will all be over a tiny 10. Yes, they will, brothers and sisters. And the last one will be the greatest of all. The greatest earthquake since man has been on the planet. When Jesus' foot sets on that mountaintop. It says the greatest earthquake ever. And God does not lie. These things, they build them on earthquake areas. They've got nuclear reactors on fault zones. And they didn't even have as good of a setup in the States as they did in Japan. They don't have as many batteries or nothing. If more than one disaster happens at one time over there, they can't handle it. Everybody knows that. What are they going to do to keep their reactors from popping? Right? Every one of them should be shut down before it's too late. But they won't. Prepare for the days that are coming. The rocks are falling from the sky. And as you saw with Australia there, luckily they got lucky. It was a little high up and it didn't get damaged. But had it been a little lower, it would have been like a nuke going off. Now imagine a couple of more of them rocks coming and landing near a nuclear plant at the problems we're going to have. Do the math, because the Bible says they're coming. And they will deep impact. Because God does not lie. Bye-bye.